Hey, somebody's got to secure the base. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Veterans. The Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. has asked for 10,000 Andy Andrews books. I'm personally donating as many as I can, but to reach 10,000, I need your help. What we're able to do to make that easier for you is for every $10 donation you make, a hardback book will be sent to the VA for veterans, for their families, and for the employees of Veterans Administration. That $10 will cover the cost of the book, the shipping, the handling. So whether you can make this a personal gift or a corporate donation, just go to andyandrews.com/veterans. This can be added to a website purchase or done as an individual entry. And thanks very much for your support. Okay, observations and answers. That's what we do here on the Professional Noticer, and we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. Today, we have a very special show, and it's amazing that we're talking about veterans because we have one of my most admired couples in the world here with us today. Many of you know that I did 8 years working for special operations, and my very first general, my very first special operations commander, the guy in charge of the whole ball of wax, is here. And I will introduce them like my boys used to say their names. Please welcome General Wooley and Mrs. General Wooley. This is Mike and Kathy Wooley. Thank you guys for being here.
Well, thanks for having us, Andy. It's always great to come over and see the Andrews clan, and especially in this wonderful studio. And congratulations, by the way, on the successful first showing of your Blue Plate special on Wisdom Harbor.
That's
awesome.
Yeah, we're excited about that. And I mean, I was so excited about you guys coming. Yeah, Polly and the boys say hello. And some of my greatest times in my life were with you guys, and certainly some of the most interesting. and so if you don't mind, give a brief background, Mike, of your career, of how you got to be the Special Operations Commander.
Wow, that's a great question, and one that probably didn't have an answer that you would even think that would fit together. I knew at an early age that I wanted to fly airplanes, and I had the opportunity through some good fortune and a lot of just things piecing together that you would never think would fit together, and got to start flying when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And I knew after, 2 or 3 years of that, I wanted to fly for the airlines. And then came the dreaded draft notice.
Wow. Okay.
And so I had a low draft number. And so it was, here comes the military some way, somehow.
And this was Vietnam.
Right. Okay. So, after college, or after high school, rather, started college, and all the land grant schools in Louisiana were Louisiana natives. And so our college had Army ROTC. No aviation program, and the nearest Air Force ROTC was over at Louisiana Tech. And so in between studies and this, that, and the other, starting to figure out, okay, how am I going to deal with this military thing? I'm either going to get drafted or I'm going to join and do what I love and fly. So went to work there, talked to a recruiter, figured out, the way ahead, graduated from college, went to OTS, went to pilot training, and then, as they say, the rest is history. Still had in the back of my mind, though, after the Vietnam War was over, that I wanted to fly for the airlines. But as, Kathy and I were going through the rigors of military life, we just never got around to getting out. It was too much fun and too fulfilling of a lifestyle. It wasn't a career yet; it was a lifestyle.
Right.
And we just kind of kept going, and one thing led to another, and you never set your sights on being a general. About the most lofty goal I had was to be a squadron commander. And I said, if I can lead people and, be the boss at a squadron, that would be the ultimate for me. And again, pieces just kept falling.
But you were married to Kathy, and so that propelled you
exactly
even more. If it had just been you, maybe you would have been just a squadron commander. But you were married to Kathy, and so that had 3 stars written all over it.
Well,
right there.
I tell you, it is a family deal. It's not just the military member, but it is the whole family. And we're blessed with 2 great daughters that are great mothers, and 3 grandkids, and happily they are married to military men and very successful military men. So, we're just so blessed, and we're.
You say that it is a family thing, and I think that the people listening might hear that and think, okay, so he's a family guy. And you are. However, you are also one of the greatest leaders I've ever had the opportunity to be around. And you and I have had some amazing conversations. Mm. And I know that that part of getting a 2nd star and a 3rd star, it does require something of your family, because without, it has to be the full package there. And this is why, when I talk to corporate leaders, sometimes I tell them that, we were teasing a minute ago about, with Kathy, you had 3 stars written all over you. Well, without Kathy's participation and without her level head and her class, there are a lot of people that don't make that 2nd or 3rd star, and it's not necessarily them.
Mm. Yeah, it is a family affair, if you will. And I was taken away from baseball games, cheerleading practice, ballet recitals, missed birthdays, on and on and on. But, as you go along and you realize that it's a calling rather than a job, and that there is something sacred about, wearing the uniform of this country, and the fact that the defense of the world's greatest nation is worthy of some sacrifice. And so I was very fortunate to have an understanding wife and 2 understanding kids. that told me more than once that, Dad, we like the military life, but it's not for us, and we're going to go on and do something else. And now they're both
yeah,
married to military men, and it just
when we met, you were just about to be appointed as Special Operations Commander.
Mm-hmm.
You and I met overseas,
right
and about
at
to
a
be
USO show,
right, and so you were about to be appointed, and so when I met you, Kathy, you were already in that position, and I was always amazed that you had a responsibility that is so broad that it's probably not written down anywhere. But you are the confidant, you're the comforter, you're the encourager of so many families, so many spouses, and you're first boots on the ground when something bad happens to a spouse. You're there to help pick up those family pieces and to support that. What was that like being in that position?
We're going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to say that when we got married on Mike's commissioning day. We had the graduation ceremony that morning in San Antonio, and then in the afternoon, we had our wedding on Medina Base in San Antonio. And, Mike was a Christian. I was a Christian when we met in college. And, I just, as Christians, and we say, to God be the glory. And God has always been just the foundation of our marriage first, and then going into the military life for as long as we were in. We absolutely could not have done anything without God. So, the helping out the spouses and being there with all of them, and that goes for any organization that helps out with the spouses and their in their particular organization. You just kind of put yourself in their place and whatever they're dealing with at the time. If it's a personal thing, if it's fixing something around the house or whatever, that always happens whenever the guys go away.
Washing machine always breaks when we're gone.
When he was flying the line, those first years of our marriage, and it would just, I went through my first earthquake in Charleston and everything. And so it was, of course, he was gone. And so just everything breaks and all that whenever they're away. So you just kind of put yourself in their place, and then you do what you can to help them.
You kind of said it earlier, Andy, but one of her main jobs, for the lack of a better word, was to organize the spouses for unexpected things that would happen, and to be the comforter in chief, if you will, of the unit that she was part of. A plane crashed, a battle death, birth of a child, anything along those lines where, all the people that were not deployed, taking care of them and making sure that their needs were met when something unexpected happen. And she was the organizer, and she was fantastic at that. And, you can see her family upbringing, her values that her mom and dad instilled in her at an early age. And, she instilled those same values in our two girls, with love and respect, put her arms around those spouses that, may have just lost a husband in a plane crash and that awful time, on and on and on. I brag on her every chance I get because she's fantastic as a wife, mother, grandmother, and just all around great lady.
She certainly has great manners. I always laughed going over with you guys, whether we would be eating with the squadron commanders and their spouses or whether we would be eating at your home. I was always a little nervous because your protocol officer, Monica Early.
Yep. Good old Monica.
Yeah, she was the one who, when somebody gets their first star, she meets with those new generals and their spouses because they're going to be spread across the world, put in positions of eating at embassies and doing formal things. And so she is the one who teaches everybody. And I used to think, oh my God, please don't put me at Monica's table.
Yeah.
I mean, Polly's not here to tell me what to do, and Monica's going to get on to me. But there was one time, and I just love this story. You guys you just have to relate this. There was one time that Monica's training really came into play because you guys, now you were at Milden Hall?
RAF Milden Hall.
Yeah. Okay. And so you got an invitation. And what was the invitation to?
Well, I came home and said, Kathy, you are not going to believe what we got in the distribution today. We have an invite to go to Buckingham Palace to be a part of the state banquet when President Bush and his party were to be honored at Buckingham Palace by the Queen of England. And I'll turn it over to Kathy because she's got the details of the story.
Yeah, and Kathy somehow got a better seat.
Yeah,
Let's hear this.
Yeah,
Come on, Kathy.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Come on, Kathy.
Take it
Tell
away,
us the
babe.
story.
So we got to Buckingham Palace. Mike's driver there while we were at Milden Hall drove us down there. Peter did, and we got there, and then for everybody, they would announce this. And by the way, this was the first state banquet at Buckingham Palace in 82 years. Many state visits, state dinners, but that was the first state banquet in 82 years for Woodrow Wilson. The last one was given for Woodrow Wilson.
Oh, my gosh.
So these people were that were the Beefeaters costume people. They came, they met you at the door, and it was really like an Alice in Wonderland fairy tale that you were in. And they had the long trumpet, and they would announce your name whenever you came in. And so we were all in the big foyer waiting to go through the receiving line. And Mike said, well, let's look at our program. And whenever on the seating chart, you each got a personalized program and
Wow.
with the menu, the seating chart, and all that in there. And so you opened it up like this, and there was a dot beside your name where you were going to sit. And so in the ballroom, and the guest was 300 people. So in the ballroom, there was the head table and then 3 long tables. And so Mike Mike says, let's just see where we're eating while we're waiting to go through the receiving line. Let's see where we're going to be sitting. And so he opened it up. And so it was way down here, close to the orchestra pit. And he said, oh, here we are down here. And he goes, well, wait a minute. That's just my name. And I said, well, are you sure I was invited to this? And he said, of course you're invited to this. And he said, well, open yours up. And so I opened mine up. And so I was sitting, my seat was up there right at the head table. And one guy over from the head table. So Lord somebody was sitting next to me, and then Lord somebody else was sitting on the other side.
She called him Lord Rats and Frets.
And we just, we were talking about why what was it like that? We couldn't figure it out. So anyway, we went in there, went through the receiving line. Have I ever told you about the receiving line? Going through, and I don't think I've told you that.
No, tell me.
Went through the receiving line. So we met Prince Philip. Of course, they have all their people telling them all who it is. So we meet Queen Elizabeth, and so you curtsy. And the proper etiquette was to curtsy and say, Your Majesty, the first time that you meet her. And then you go on down. President Bush was next. And I had never met him. Mike had, but I had never met President Bush. And so I said, President Bush, I said, it's just an honor to meet you. And I said, and my name is Kathy Wooley, and I'm from Spring Hill, Louisiana. So I brought his hand up like this. And so Laura Bush was, next to him, and she said, we can tell by your accent. So anyway, went on down and went into the long corridor, went in the ballroom, and Mike, we went to his seat, and Cherie Blair was seated next to him. And
so you're sitting next to Tony Blair's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In the back, in the way back, with the in
the cheap seats.
In the cheap seats, okay.
And then here I am up there, and so we went through. That was it was like the TV cameras were Fox News was there, CNN, C-SPAN, all of that would coming in taking pictures. They had what do you call it? The bell. Bagpipers. So the bagpipers came through and they served the meal family style. And so when it came time to eat, and the utensils were gold.
Did you think about slipping one in your purse?
Yeah. As I thought about it, yeah. And so they came around, we ate. And so afterwards, after all the toast and everything, because where I was sitting like this, then looking straight ahead, the head table was over to my right. And Queen Elizabeth I would just turn my head and there she was. And then President Bush was beside her. Colin Powell, Tony Blair, Condoleezza Rice was down that way. And I was just, I couldn't believe I was just sitting up there. And the coolest thing about the guy next to me, on the right-hand side of me, we were talking, and he said, how long have you been over here? And I told him, and I said, have you ever been to the States? And he said, oh, yes. And he would go in the Queen's stead sometimes, and so that's what his job was. And so he was telling me, he said, we would go to the States, and I said, you'd probably land in Washington or New York or somewhere. He said, no, actually, we would land in San Diego. And he said, we'd go to San Diego and stay, a couple of weeks or so. And I said, well, that's really nice. He said, yeah, my wife found a beautiful home there. And we ended up buying this house. And I said, well, that's great. Then, have a house when you come over. And he said, no. He said, we had it cut up and shipped over to Oxford. So it was shipped over to Oxford, England. And, He said, I can take you there and show it to you. And I said, well,
that is
all
a
right.
step above hauling a double wide down the highway.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep.
So anyway, the Queen and President Bush did their toast, and then they invited us to all go down to the coffee room and have coffee down there. And so in this private room where all of the head table was going to be, and they had it locked with this big
Timber.
wooden timber thing. And then
Really?
And then the beef eaters were there.
The pikes, and it was incredible.
Alice in
So everybody
Wonderland.
else is out here, but the VIP room is in here.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it's locked by one of the, okay.
And so we're just kind of hanging out, drinking coffee like this. And so in just a few minutes, this guy with all of his red costume came up and had a scroll. And he did like this, and he said, "General and Mrs. Wooley, the Queen wishes to speak with you now." And so I said, "What?" And he said, and so this was all very comical to these people, because they never had done this before. 82 years, right? So they never had done this before. And he said, "Yes." He said, "The Queen wishes to speak with you now." So,
Now being the key word.
Yeah. So Mike says, "Well, come on, let's put our cups down." So we go in there, and they raised the lock up, and we went in. So we learned later that they had chosen 30 people from the 300
From the commoners.
to go in there and to talk with the Queen. And we did not know this, prior to this, we didn't know this. And so we went in there, and he took us over to her. It was our allotted time. And so Mike started talking with, they started directly talking about the Lake and Heath, because the fighters were at Lake and Heath, and then at Mildenhall was the other airplanes. And
Well, I was thanking her as well she had opened up, or her government opened up RAF Fairford for us to use. We used it as a B-52 base, staging base for several of the operations that were going on at the time we were there. So I was, thanking her for that on behalf of, the U.S. Air Force. And, talking about would love to host her and Prince Philip and Prince Charles maybe to come out and, get a tour of one of the bases, and, on and on and on. And so, Kathy was kind of, looking at me, and I was kind of looking at her out the corner of my eye because, I guess I'm taking, the small talk about airplanes and all that stuff too far.
I know. I'm a husband. I know what the look is like.
Yeah, the look.
There with the Queen, and you got your wife going.
One thing about Her Majesty, very striking lady, just beautiful skin, piercing blue eyes, and when you use the word majesty, she is majestic. It's unbelievable. Of course, she had on her, big crown and all the
she
crown
was
jewels.
Crown?
Oh yeah. It was formal to the max. And of course, she had on her purse and gloves, and the typical Queen Elizabeth, but very striking.
I always think of her in that
lady.
hat.
Yeah.
But with the crown, you wonder, do you go to bed with
she did have her purse. She had her purse and everything, but we were told the guests were not to wear gloves, because the Queen would have her gloves, would be wearing her gloves for shaking hands. And so we were not to wear gloves. And that was the first thing I thought of about getting, was gloves to wear, the long evening gloves.
Right.
And they said, no gloves, because she was going to be wearing her gloves.
So why? No glove on glove?
No glove.
Beats me.
Glove. Yeah. So anyway, protocol.
Write that down and give her a call.
Yeah.
Protocol had written up our host nation advisor had gotten all this information and everything about the etiquette and the dress, and also at the table, and everything about just the formality of it and everything, all the formalities, but about the dress. And
you call her Your Majesty first, and then after that,
ma'am.
I'd have been a wreck. I I would have done something wrong. So when you
And
started,
so anyway,
you started talking to her.
so they were just she just kind of quit talking to Mike. She just kind of quit talking to Mike, and she put
Happens
down
a lot.
She quit talking to Mike, and she looked down, and she had her hanky and her handkerchief in her purse, and she was just looking down, and she was just kind of fiddling, and so that's whenever we were looking at each other, and so I remembered in what the papers that I read and everything that. This was on November the 19th in 2003. And so November the 20th is their anniversary. And so I had remembered reading that. And so nobody was coming to get us and nobody was talking. So
She was tired of talking to you.
Yeah.
and I said, ma'am, I said, in my readings before we came here tonight, and she knew that, we were all briefed and given stuff to read and everything. And so I said, in my readings before coming tonight, I saw where tomorrow is yours and Prince Philip's anniversary, and I would like to wish you a happy anniversary. And so she was all looking down while I was even talking to her. And then she looked up. And she looked up square in the eye, and she pointed that gloved finger at me, and she said, I was just thinking about that this morning. And I think he's going to forget. And I said, ma'am, I know where he is right now, and I'm going to make sure he doesn't forget. And so about that time, the guy came, and we were escorted out. We went over and talked with Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice a few minutes, and then went on out. And we went out to they let us out that big door. So we were back in the coffee room now. And so Mike said, okay, wise guy, there's Prince Philip over there.
There he is. Go get him.
Go over there. So he goes over there with me, and we walk over there to him. And so he had his back to me, real tall guy, of course, and he had his back to me. And I just tapped him on his right shoulder. And I said, he turned around and he said, what? And I said,
Really?
And I said, Prince Philip, I said, my name is Kathy Wooley, and I said, we were just in there talking with your wife.
Not the queen.
Not the queen. Your wife.
Yeah.
I said, we were just in there talking with your wife. And I said, I told her that I had read where tomorrow is your anniversary, and she thinks that you're going to forget. And he said, she thinks I'm going to forget? And I said, yeah. And so that was it. And then he turned back around, and it was getting close to us to leave Buckingham Palace, and so we just
No, thanks for reminding me. No, gosh, no, I won't forget. No, gosh, I've already gotten her a stuffed animal.
And I told Mike, I said, I would have loved, that's really one time I would have loved to have followed up and just said, called her.
Yeah.
What did he get you? I got to know what he got you.
Oh, my God.
But what an experience. I sat there, and to this day, that was in 2003, and I think about that time, and what an opportunity, and we pinch ourselves. We did all through the whole thing, just sitting there.
We had incredible flashbacks during the funeral of Prince Philip. And,
sure.
We talked about it a lot and reminisced. It gave us a lot to think about and talk about during that.
But not only, what an opportunity, Mike Wooley from Alexandria, Louisiana, Kathy McCleary from Sarepta, Louisiana, and and then you're in there having dinner with the Queen, and not only just having dinner with the Queen, but chit chatting with the Queen.
Yeah, it is astonishing, and I have appreciated being a fly on the wall in some of your moments, some of your business moments, and then I remember being at the Order of the Sword. That still is a highlight of my memories, because here the Order of the Sword has been given away how many times in the history?
I've lost count, but it's I think I was number 160 something.
Yeah, I mean, they don't give it away every year.
Right.
And it's usually, and it's decided upon by enlisted
By the
personnel.
enlisted, right.
And so it's rarely a high-level officer that is awarded this. And so I think it's just an amazing tribute to both of you that you were honored with this. And so Polly and I got to go to that. Polly, me, and your mom and dad were the only people in there in civilian clothes.
Yeah.
We were in, tuxedo and gown, and but that was awesome, sitting there with your dad and mom and watching them honor you with the Order of the Sword. I still have one of the wine glasses that were made for that night over here in my memorabilia case.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to mention, your dad was wounded on Iwo Jima.
Yes.
And tell about, just very briefly, tell about when you got your first star and you called your dad.
Yep. Mom and Dad were there at the Order of the Sword. I was very thankful of that. In fact, we've got one of those electronic picture frames where you shoot pictures into it, and one of the pictures in there are, Dad coming through the cordon of swords, and he was a Marine, and him and his two brothers quit high school to join the Marine Corps during World War II. They were definitely part of the greatest generation, and all three of them made it out of the Pacific alive. All three of them were on Iwo Jima. Dad was wounded by a Japanese sniper when he was landing, and so he didn't see a lot of action. They, drug him up to the aid station on shore. He got shot right at water's edge, and so they took him to the aid station. He stayed there several hours before they were able to evacuate him back off the island to a hospital ship. But to your point, being a war veteran, and he was very proud of his service, just like I'm very proud of my service. And so, when I notified Mom and Dad that their son had made general, he said, "Well, boy, remember this." He said, "A private in the Marine Corps outranks a 1-star in the Air Force." And he loved to use that line. And, of course, he would figure out how to get a newspaper interview or whatever, if I was coming into town, and he would always, use that as a jab line. Yeah. So that's a fond memory, and I think about that when I see him coming through that cordon that night at the Order of the Sword.
Right.
I would just am so thankful that both my parents were alive to be at that ceremony.
Yeah, it was awesome. I've got one more story that I would like to prompt you guys to tell, and it's. When people imagine what you do and how you both lived when, I mean, you're head of it all, and so you have opportunities and responsibilities beyond the written orders, and it's not what you do, it's who you are, and so there was a moment that you guys didn't know was going to happen, but it happened when you got a flight from Germany back to America on a C-5. Will you tell that story?
Yeah, we were at a conference. There's several times in the year where the 3 and the 4 stars in the Air Force get together, and they're called Corona conferences. And this particular one, it was highlighting the U.S. Air Force in Germany. And so we were over there at USAFE, United States Air Force Europe. USAFE is the acronym.
At Ramstein?
At Ramstein, yep. And Kathy and I had been stationed there several years before at the 86th Airlift Wing there at Ramstein. And so we were back for this conference and had a great time. And we the weather was starting to move in all over the continent, and there was even another front moving across the U.S. So everybody was scrambling after the conference was over to try to, get back home, and we were had to, work alternate travel because the plane that had the 4 stars on board, it had already left, and several different things that happened. And so we, the protocol office there said, well, there's a C-5 that's going back, and, we can get you on that airplane to go back to the U.S. And so I said, yeah, that'd be great. At this point, just, don't want to upset any apple carts, but would like to, get home as soon as we could. So flight was leaving, I don't know, several hours later. And, we were over there in the terminal at the lounge and, waiting to board the flight. And so had my aide came and whispered in my ear. He said, something that you need to know before you get on this flight. Said, the helicopter crash that had the Navy SEALs and some Marine Corps killed in action going to be on that flight, and there's going to be, what was it?
Well, it was 31 that was killed in the helicopter crash, and then there were 41 that they were sending back. So it was a total of 41 flag draped transfer containers. So,
I wanted to make sure that, Kathy would be okay with boarding that flight. And, it was emotional time for everybody. And, with the bad weather and this, that, and the other. So she agreed, and, we got on the flight. And I tell you, we spent a lot of time at Walter Reed, talking with, the wounded and recovering and this, that, and the other. But, those are emotional events in themselves. But, when you are boarding an airplane with 41 flag-draped coffins of warriors who gave the ultimate sacrifice, that's a very, very emotional thing. And, you wonder as you walk past each one of those, who is that? what family are left behind. Do they have children? What is their life going to be like? Will they understand that their father is a hero? Just on and on and on. And
So, Kathy, what was it like on that flight? So you get on, you sit down.
And they were giving us a lot of blankets because it was so cold. This was the end of January. And so, and we were going to be flying from Frankfurt to Dover. And what their initial plan was for family members to meet them at Dover. And so they had asked Mike to officiate at the when we landed, because he was the high ranking on the plane. And so of course he agreed to and everything. And so we kind of got into planning mode, of families receiving them and everything when we landed. And so I had never flown on a C-5 before, so that was just a whole different travel experience for me. And then when Mike told me, I told him, I said, it's okay. It's fine. But this was before we took off. And so he said, they just want to know if you're good with this. And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And so, and I was, and everything. It was just very, when we landed, they had to cancel they had already called the families and everything because the weather was just too bad to have a ceremony, or for the families to even come to Dover.
It was blizzard, ice underneath snow, and it was just terrible conditions, wind blowing.
So anyway, we landed safely, and so we're, of course, passengers on a C-5 are sitting right at the top of the plane, and so you come down on the steps, and then when I got down there, and I just, it was just I think about this, especially every Memorial Day in May.
Mm-hmm.
I think about this time. I get emotional telling it, because of, these people were going from, when I read about this when the Marine helicopter that got shot down. In fact, in the news it said they weren't sure if it got shot down or if because of a weather, because it was a terrible dust storm at the time. So, but nevertheless, it went down, and they were going from point A to point B. They were being transferred from point A to point B, and so whether they got shot down, and the other 41 people, who gave their lives for our country, for our freedom, they were there. And the way that we were to get off of that plane was there was a track about this wide, and you just had to put your feet, all of us had to do this to get off of the plane. And you just had to, heel toe, heel toe, heel toe to get off. And so it was, that story, and, of course, the Queen story that's just like an Alice in Wonderland story. It's like, wow. But, this other story is like, wow. It was tough.
And so how do you remember that, Kathy? I mean, what do you think of on Memorial Day?
It's not just on Memorial Day that I think about that. I just think of that as what an opportunity. And I think about we didn't even know who those people were, and we were going back with them to their families. And I just felt a big honor for me to go to ride with them.
I know how deeply you feel this. And I mean, you feel this more deeply than the ordinary American, and we feel this too. But you have a connection there that we don't have. I mean, you were there, and the families could not be there, and you were there with those young men. And I would like to put you in touch with Karen Vaughn. Her son Aaron was one of the SEALs on that flight, and Karen is an awesome lady, and I think Karen would be honored to meet you, to know that you were with her son on that flight, and I'll make that happen. Karen is a friend of
That'd be
mine,
great.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
and but Aaron was a very special young man, and she can tell you Aaron's story, but to have experienced that, and to be there. And I know that you've told me that you started praying for those families then, and you have not stopped.
I did. You know, you just think about the families, and the times during the year that I think about that. You know, when I think about that flight, I pray for those families. That's just something that you just never get over. You get through it, but you don't get over it. And you know, I pray for those families, especially on Memorial Day.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one last question, and that really concerns us more than it does you. But how can we support our armed services? There are many of us who say thank you for your service. There are many of us who buy a meal of somebody we see across. But what speaks the loudest? What can we do? What would, in your experience, having run the whole gamut and seen the whole gamut, and having had many conversations, I'm sure, about how people have been treated one way or another, what would you suggest for us?
Having come into the military at the end of Vietnam, and seeing returning Vietnam veterans being treated the way that they were treated, and all the way up through current times where, the military is back in favor, if you can use that word. I think that anybody, any person that commits their life to the defense of this nation, wants to be recognized in some fashion. And I think probably the most meaningful thing is that touch on the shoulder, that thank you, that wave, or that young boy or girl that gives you a salute if you're in uniform in the airport, changing planes. That just makes anybody's day and makes it worthwhile, if you will. So in terms of the biggest bang for the buck, I think that whispering thank you, or, when you get up at the diner and you go to pay your bill and the cashier says it's already taken care of, and you don't know who did that, but you feel warm inside that you are appreciated, and one person has recognized another person for the sacrifice that they have signed up for in advance. Beyond that, a charitable organization that does good works. Your sponsor today, the books. I want to make a donation before we leave the studio today to get some of those books in the hands of those folks, because that is very special, very appreciated. And one of the things that I liked and still do about your message and your ability to communicate is it's forthright, and it's good versus evil, and good wins in the end. Kathy mentioned Christians. We know the way this is going to end. We know exactly the way this is going to end. And it's just, from now until the end is the part that we've got to worry about. So, pick out a charity that does good work, that supports veterans, especially those that are suffering from, the maladies of war, whether it's a visual impairment that you can see, loss of limb, loss of eye, or whatever, or those that you can't see, or some of the worst ones, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, on and on and on. I mean, with all my experience, I still can't imagine the horrors of, being up close and personal in a wartime battle for your life, which some of these warriors have experienced. You just can't imagine the hell that they go through, every day, every night. So beyond that, volunteer for some caring organizations. But I think that touch on the shoulder and that thanks for your service is just something that's invaluable.
That's awesome. Well, Karen Vaughn, you'll find out Karen does great work with Louise Thaxton and American Warrior Initiative, and they provide service dogs. I mean, they gave away almost 20 in one day recently, and so it's just amazing. But thank you guys so much.
Kathy's got a story about service dogs. In Tampa, they were raising puppies to be trained eventually for service dogs, and it's getting on the floor and playing with those little puppies, and then thinking about what they're being raised to do, and it's just incredible.
Thank you guys for your service and for what you mean to all of us.
Well, thank you, Andy.
Really appreciate you guys being here too.
Thank you for having us. It's been our pleasure, and we wish you all the best with Wisdom Harbor and the things that it will do. I know it's going to grow and flourish and just be blessed by God and multiplied in ways that we don't understand.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, General Wooley and Mrs. General Wooley. Yeah. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to answers for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Daggers for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by UltimateTours.com. Are you an experienced traveler? Have you already vacationed all over the world? Are you bored with the typical tourist attractions? Let UltimateTours.com book your next trip. At UltimateTours.com, we have access to the world's most exciting vacation destinations, and this month, we're offering a special on Chernobyl National Park. The former Soviet Union has now opened this unique garden spot to tourism, so if you're ready to expand your horizons, monthly trips are being planned. For outdoor enthusiasts, we offer the two-headed wolf hunts and the melting trout fishing trips. Sightseers will enjoy the bubbling lakes and abandoned buildings. If you want to go home with a tan, less than 3 minutes on the beach of your choice and your skin will positively glow. So contact UltimateTours.com and put Chernobyl National Park on your itinerary right away. If you prefer to stay closer to home, be patient. Our 3-mile island tour experience will be available soon.